Hi again, everybody, and welcome to the Quality Inn of Crawfordsville, Indiana, and the Crawfordsville Rotary Club. Today's speaker is going to be Dr. Tony Bennett, Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of Indiana, and he will be introduced by Claude Johnson, who is a past president and a member of the club.
This is my fifth and final February Wednesday. Hey, it's a real pleasure for me to introduce to you Tony Bennett. Tony is Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of Indiana. Tony.
I have to tell you, I get to do Rotary speeches pretty frequently. I haven't been to one as kind of lively and as fun-loving as this, so you should give yourselves a round of applause. You guys are pretty good sports, don't you? I wish you guys in the State House would take a lesson. They're not nearly as good sports. It's good to be here, and I guess I would be remiss if I don't start with a couple of really recognitions. First, there are two people here that I think personify many of the things we talk about in education. The first person, Greg Hunt. Greg, I know you guys know him, right? Many times, and having been through all the seats of education, I've been a teacher, I've been a coach, I've been a principal, assistant superintendent, superintendent. I'm going to tell you the toughest job in education is a high school principal. There is no tougher job in education than a high school principal. And I just had the opportunity to spend about an hour with Greg, assistant principal, some of their teachers. And I will tell you folks here in Crawfordsville, you should be very proud of what Greg is leading at Crawfordsville. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the state and national context. But Greg, thank you, and thank you for giving us a glimpse of what excellence can be, because Crawfordsville High School is truly one of those places of excellence in our state. So again, thank you. I always say the high school principal is the toughest job, the loneliest job in education is the district superintendent. I can say this, I don't know any, are there any school board members here in Crawfordsville? Good. Because if you've ever had to like appease a school board, it's like pushing a Cadillac up a steep hill of the road. It's very hard, and I think we serve many masters, and Kathy has been a person who has had a pretty loud voice in the Department of Education. I mean that in the most positive way. Very respected, long before I ever came to office, but even continuing through that. Kathy has been with the School Safety Specialist Academy since the onset, right, Kathy? A member of our advisory, kind of the steering group for that. And all you have to do is pick up yesterday's paper and see what happened in Ohio. And you will know the importance of that in Indiana. And Kathy is also one of our trainers in our state's teacher evaluation model. So, you know, you do have an incredible resource here occupying the loneliest chair in education. So, Kathy, thank you for your leadership as well. Kathy's heard this. I don't think anyone else in here has, but I want to start with a little brief anecdote. Something that happened to me in March of 2009, again in March of 2010. It has probably been the catalyst to everything we've tried to do in education. It's personified my approach to what we're doing, and I want to share that with you. March of 2009, we've been in office about 60 days. I got an invitation to go to the Future Business Leaders of America convention conference at Keystone at the Crossing. 7 o'clock in the morning to be the breakfast speaker. That's how you know you've only been in office two months. Okay, you're the breakfast speaker at 7 o'clock in the morning for Future Business Leaders of America. So I go, I gave the speech, hey, international competition, there's kids all across the country, all around the world, trying to take your seats in places like Wabash, in places like DePaul, and places like Notre Dame. And you know what, you got to ratchet it up, and you've got to give your best effort, and we have to turn this thing around so that our kids occupy the seats in the universities. Our kids get the jobs, and we were driving that point home. Kids very politely applauded and then said, go home, we're going to have fun here. job to come back at 7 o'clock, 7 a.m. speaking engagement. I'd spent the night before in Gary working on school turnaround initiatives, so I didn't have a very good night the night before. Got home very late, got there, and the minute I walked into the conference room, this little fellow walks up to me and he says, very quickly, I mean, just makes a beeline at me. He says, Dr. Bennett, do you remember me? Of course, 7 o'clock in the morning, I got home at 2, didn't have contacts in. I wanted to say, little buddy, I got to tell you something. I can't see you. I did. I was very polite. I said, well, aren't you one of the officers here? He says, yes, my name is William Zapp. He says, Dr. Bennett, can I give you a gift? Now, I've been in office 14 months. I think you guys have kept pace. We were talking here. We have kind of advanced discussion in education. I wanted to ask old William, I wanted to say, William, are your mom and dad teachers? Does it tick? Do they give you cookies? Can like Ross taste test them before I eat them? But he took me over to his briefcase and handed me a book. And this little red book now sits on my nightstand, and it has since March of 2010. And the title of the red book is this. It's called Fierce Urgency, Education and Future Global Competition Through the Eyes of a Young Chinese Immigrant. And the author is William Zapp, 17-year-old student from Kokomo High School, who grew up in China, moved to Vancouver, and then moved to Kokomo the last 5 years of his educational career. And William inscribed on the front cover of that book, he says, to Dr. Bennett, who inspired me to write this book. And on about page 15 of Fierce Urgency, William makes an observation about education that I think is incredible to think about. He says, education is like a big old chess game. It's like a big chess game. And he says, you know, my native country, China, they're playing chess to win. And he says, my experience in the United States, and specifically in Indiana, is we're playing chess not to lose. And he says, I fear that if we don't start playing chess to win, they're going to take us over. And that is the focus of Fierce Urgency. His idea is that as a nation, and specifically as a state, how do we act with fierce urgency? What do we do to make sure kids like William Zapp are running this place when we're gone? And I thought, you know, like I said, this book sits on my nightstand. It's literally, if I could say, it's the prized possession I have since I have come to this job. It's the one gift that every day I see. It's that little red book that was written by a 17-year-old kid. It's self-edited and it's available on Amazon. It's a very compelling piece. And so I have asked myself, how do we act with the fierce urgency William talks about? And most recently, and I'm a pretty strong reader, I picked up General Petraeus' new book, All In. I don't know if anyone's read that. It's a great read. But General Petraeus, for the first time, and I think about this, I got William's book in 2010. So here we are in 2012. I just finished General Petraeus' book, and I was finally able to kind of connect the dots of what fierce urgency means. General Petraeus says we got to do 4 things if we're going to be successful. Talked about this in the surge in Iraq. He's talking about this with the surge in Afghanistan. Everything about leadership is about 4 things. And he said the first thing is to get the big ideas right. Get the big ideas right. Well, I'm going to pick on Greg. I'll deviate from what our communication staff writes for me. They love it if I do this, by the way. But I want to talk about a big idea. In our world, we measure everything. I measure everything. There's a scoreboard outside my office. Kathy has probably seen it. That's 90, 25, 90. 90% of our kids will pass our state's assessments. 25% will graduate with advanced placement, international baccalaureate, or dual credit. And 90% will graduate from high school with a meaningful high school diploma, which I believe means to be they shouldn't need graduation to get to college. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you what I saw today in Crawfordsville that tells me that we're getting the big ideas right. Okay, I'm going to tell you exactly what I saw today in Crawfordsville to get the big ideas right. I saw a principal, an assistant principal, and a teaching staff with 70% of their children receiving free and reduced lunches have 17% of their children passing advanced placement only. Now, we said 25% advanced placement, international baccalaureate, or dual credit. Crawfordsville High School is 17% advanced placement only, not counting dual credit opportunities, not counting it in industry-based certifications through Career and Technical Education Center. 17%. One of the leading indicators in education for college success in a place where 70% of the children are getting free and reduced lunches, they're passing advanced placement courses. That's a big idea, and they're getting it right. I think I got the percentage right on this, Greg. It's over 90%. What's the exact percentage? Give it to me. You're on, are you smarter than the state superintendent, Greg? 91%. Let's go. 92.4. That's it. 92. I remembered it was 92.4. I thought it was 92.7, but 92.4%. Take the 7, Greg. 92.4% of the high school graduates in Crawfordsville leave Crawfordsville without a waiver diploma. Now that, I'm going to tell you something, folks, you'll be incredibly proud of that. 92.4% of the students in Crawfordsville High School earn a non-waiver graduation diploma. And I saw firsthand how doing little things right, making sure we capture the kids who are struggling and give them the remediation they need so they don't need to be remediated later. That's being done in Crawfordsville. And I think William talking about fierce urgency, and I think General Petraeus talking about big ideas, right? I think those are examples. Those are examples. General Petraeus says the next thing you have to do is communicate. Okay, communicate your big idea. You know, I have to tell you, folks, that's why we're here. One of the things I want to communicate to you today is while you mentioned it correctly, so you may take a comment to me as we came in. I agree with everything you've done. I do agree with some things, don't agree with others, but we've advanced the discussion in education in this center. Well, you know, we believe that's what we should be doing every day. Think about this. The state of Indiana spends the greatest percentage of its general fund budget on K-12 education, and the state of Indiana spends more of its general fund budget by percentage than any other state in the country on K-12 education. Okay? Think about that. So, why wouldn't we be discussing this all the time? Why wouldn't we be debating the best way for our students to have the most effective teachers? Hence, Kathy Steele is on one of our trainers on our state's new evaluation. Getting the big ideas right means making sure we have the most effective teachers in every classroom. We recognize and reward them for the professionals they are. And folks, I'm going to be honest, and this is the callous part of this at times. There are times that that man and that lady have to look at someone and say, I'm sorry, you don't belong in front of children. And we have to give them the tools to do that in the most effective, the most professional way possible. And part of communicating this is doing what we're doing today. Part of communicating this in the last 2 years, I have personally been in front of about 13,000 educators. Believe me, those weren't all fun meetings. Not everyone agreed with us. But communicating the big idea has led us to having this state and national debate. And frankly, I think we have to give our President and Secretary of Education a tremendous amount of credit. You know, as diametrically opposite as we are politically, I think President Obama and Secretary Duncan have advanced an education discussion in our country that for far too long we've let sit stagnant. General Petraeus talks about the third piece of this, and that's implementation. Today we're implementing. Kathy and I were just talking about implementation of our state's evaluation. I will tell you, as a former principal, I was never trained to evaluate teachers. I want you to think about that. I was never formally trained. Greg and I were sharing, and he said I wasn't either. So right now, we are trying to train somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 people in something many of them were never trained to do. The implementation of this is phenomenal. The implementation of new freedoms for folks like Kathy. The implementation, as we get very close to that all third graders should read on level before they move to fourth grade. Those implementation pieces are huge, and it's critical the state gets them right. That's why we're utilizing the strengths of great educators and people. And the fourth thing that General Petraeus says is don't be afraid to adjust. Analyze and adjust the implementation of your ideas. And that's what we're doing now. Kathy is actually giving us feedback. Our pilot schools around our teacher evaluation, they're giving us feedback today about what that evaluation should look like, how do we do it effectively, how do we do it efficiently with the personnel we have. These are big things that we have to adapt. So I go back to these two kind of monumental times in my professional life. William Zhao telling me, and he tells me this frequently, we still exchange emails, he's a Wells scholar at IU. And William emails me frequently. He'll always say, what are we doing back at fierce urgency? And you know, I now can answer William by saying, you know, William, let's just take a look. You know, we're getting the big ideas right. We're communicating big ideas. We're implementing those big ideas, and we're modifying as we go. And the result of that is every indicator in this state is up. Every indicator. So I often say this when I am accused, and some of you have heard this, I'm the guy that was out to destroy public education. That was my intent when I started. I have been a dismal failure. I have been a dismal failure because in the last 2 years, our state's assessments have improved over 4.5%. Our AP results, our advanced placement results by themselves. I want you to think about this right here in Indiana. This is in the face of all the giants on the East Coast. In the last 2 years, Indiana's AP results ranked second in the nation, especially among our disadvantaged and minority populations. And our graduation rate over the last 2 years has improved over 4%. So we're getting things going in the right direction, and it's because of people like Greg and Kathy. Because you have a place at Crawfordsville High School that I believe is an example for the rest of the state. I think it's a school you should be proud of. I think it's a school you should continue to support. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to tell you, it's a good day to be in my position. It's a good day. Amidst the discussion, amidst the disagreement, let's remember how this nation got here. This nation got here because we debated issues. This nation didn't get here because we all sat around a circle and agreed. It was by different-minded people. I know at the time there were a few doodles during this process. Because people had different ideas and people brought to the table and we debated. And that's what we're doing now. Indiana's better for it. We're better for it because of great professionals like the folks you have right here in Crawfordsville. And I'll end with this. The most impressive part of my job is I will travel to communities in the next 2 weeks where no person in this room put their children or grandchildren in those schools. And the shame of my job is the fact that not every child can go to Crawfordsville High School. And we should not sit still until we provide that opportunity. And that's what this debate's about. I think we're headed in the right direction, but there is no time like the present to keep moving forward. So with that, I'd just like to open it up for questions. And don't hesitate to ask a thing. Yes, sir.
My wife belongs to a local choir group.
Yes, sir.
And the word in that choir group, as you and your name was mentioned, was going to eliminate music in all the high schools.
Well, you know, I've probably been accused of causing adolescent acne, too. It's really not true, okay? I would say, and that's the best way for me to say it. First of all, there is this new initiative called Common Core State Standards, which is about 48 states coming together adopting a set of academic standards. It'll probably be the first time in our nation's history and our state's history where standard setting is actually expanding curriculum. So we're seeing more and more music, art, even PE teachers engaging in instruction. Now, let's be very true, and I think this is probably more what you're talking about. Let's be very blunt about this. Has the state encountered some economic difficulties? Absolutely. And have some local districts had to make very tough discussions? And did some of those discussions and decisions lead to paring down of special areas? There's no question about that. But that was never an expressed intent of ours. Frankly, we see every day districts, I'll give you a good example. Evansville schools cut $8 million out of their budget and actually expanded their curricular offerings because they took their school board through a process of saying, what's important to us? So, no, the answer to that is no, I don't have any intent to get rid of art, music, PE, or anything else. But you know what? What we have to have is courageous leaders like Kathy Steele leading a discussion in your communities about what's important. I'll be very candid with you, sir. I was part of a school district in southern Indiana where every one of our school board members had their family health insurance for $1. Okay? It was about a $17,500 benefit. Many times I would say to them, how many teachers could we have if you guys did really something novel and get your health insurance from your jobs? So those are tough discussions, and frankly, our school board didn't think very much of it. But those are the exact discussions. That's what makes our job lonely, is the fact that you have to take a school board through a discussion process of reprioritizing your expenditures during these times. And I think the best thing we can do as a state is give her more flexibility so that doesn't happen. But believe me, I'll just be just straight as I can be, and I'll never duck a question. There's no way in the world I'm for eliminating special areas. Yes, sir.
I've been in manufacturing for about 30 years or so, and I've been on the winning end and losing end of international competition. And when we've won, we've been able to cut areas where we weren't getting any benefits. We cut the overhead, we cut the administration, we cut all that stuff. I don't, and this was probably on a more national level, but it seems like administration and bureaucracy is just growing, and is coming out of the teachers' hides. Can you speak to that?
Sure. First of all, again, I'm going to say this in defense of, and just tell you have a different dynamic here. You know, Kathy has a central administration of what, 2 people? That's pretty lean, especially when you're talking a district this size. But I would tell you, I travel around the state and I see a lot of bloated administrations. But I'm also now going to talk to you as a business person, because even though I am a traditional educator, I came straight out. I never, the only thing I've ever done in business is I mixed paint at Sears, for a couple of years. So not like but I'll say this: in your business, in your management teams, how many direct reports do you have? Huh? 9. That guy there has how many, Greg? Yeah. So, to answer your question, what I think the exercise I think we should be doing more of is, I think, frankly, we need more instructional leadership at the building level and less at the central level. Okay? As a former superintendent and principal, very little school change happens unless you're a 2-person shop who has their hands on everything. At a place like where I was, where I had 11,000 kids, I babysat 7 school board members, I managed the building project, and I dealt with the teacher union and handled HR. That was the bulk of my job every day. Never really got to deal with instruction. But I think what we have to start thinking about is, how do we structure the building operations, the building management, to maximize instructional fidelity? And I think some of this is we have to rethink the distribution of our human capital to do that. So I agree with you. I can take you to districts, and you and I can ride around and you look at this place and say, what do all these people do? And I would encourage you to read Matt Tully's articles. We were talking about this when we came in. Some of Matt Tully's a writer from the Star. Did an incredible number of articles on Indianapolis Manual. He did an article, it was actually in the Sunday Star, so I'm not speaking out of church, I'm not ashamed to say it, where I had a meeting with Dr. White over his failing schools. And when I asked him what percentage of teachers were effective and ineffective in each one of these buildings, I was given numbers like 70, 60% of teachers were ineffective. And when I asked him what his building administrators did to address that, he said, well, they're barely pedestrian. And that's a quote. It was in the Star. So I think what we have to be thinking about is how we utilize our human capital to maximize instructional quality. Yes, sir.
I have a question, and this is related a little bit to what you just talked about. In this process that has been going through, and you just referred to some school corporations that are challenges, it seems to me that the general population has a perception, and this is kind of maybe an outfall from the process, has a perception that there's just really a lot of bad teachers and things are really bad, and you know, it's all bad, 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 and that kind of comes through to, you know, how it's expressed. How do you think about handling that?
Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. A very unfortunate byproduct of this education reform debate has been something that I feel I feel like in essence we really created some mistakes. And if you think about what we've tried to do with school grading and through teacher evaluation, it's about differentiation. It's about differentiating the great from the good from the poor, so to speak. Not necessarily that clean cut, you get the message. The rhetoric around education reform has been unfortunate, and then many times it's lumped our best teachers in with people who are underperforming. And you know what? That's wrong. That has been a very unfortunate piece of this national debate. It has gotten ugly to the extent that there is the belief that we're anti-teacher, that we don't think anything good is going on. Well, if I went to Crawfordsville, you'll see completely different. I saw Helen Hudson today. My God, what? Tell me that teacher's not a great teacher. Tell me you don't want your kid in her classroom. And I think what we have to center ourselves on is the discussion that this is about differentiation. This is about recognizing and rewarding Indiana's treasures. And it is about making sure teachers who want to get better. And it's about making sure that Greg and Kathy have the ability to remove those who don't. But I think it's very unfortunate that from all the reformers that you've read about, from Michelle Reed, Joel Klein, you know, the whole stream, sometimes the rhetoric has created some collateral damage that I don't think any of us intended for it to have. And I think we need to make sure that in Indiana we start trying to recenter our discussion around the fact that Indiana does have some of the very best teachers in the country, and we should make sure the country knows that. And we ought to make sure that the country knows that Indiana is willing to take care of those who want to get better and frankly remove those who really don't. But I think that is an issue that is a real issue. And I think that's an issue that we have to be very intentional, going back to General Petraeus, of doing a better job of communicating.